All right, guys. What's going on, guys? Your boy B Spell, and this is the Independent POV. I'm with guest Latrice, Lacrease, yeah,
LaChris.
Lacris
Yes.
Jordan. Um, like as you know, we're Facebook friends. Um, Cam Sims passed. If y'all haven't know, now you know. Yesterday, I believe he was 56. I've been a fan of his around 3 years, and ever since he uh passed, Twitter has been livid. If you don't have a Twitter, you probably living on a rock. But you gotta guess. Chris, pretty much she saw it. I'm thankful for her joining me. And Chris Jordan, tell me your point of view of the passing of Cam Samuels.
Wow, yes. Like a lot of people yesterday, I thought it was a hoax, because there's a lot of quote unquote celebrity deaths that we hear about, and then that celebrity comes and says, "Nope, I'm still alive." So,
Right.
and because there wasn't any like real independent news that had said, no, this is real and valid. It was all allegedly, we suspect. So I was like, let me just hold up. you know, my background is journalism, and back in the day, I was an investigative journalist. So I always, whenever I heard information or I received information, I always dug deeper because you never want to look like an idiot when the information is incorrect. So I just kind of, like everybody, just kind of looked at what was being said, looking for clues,
Right.
definitely waiting to hear from the family. The family hadn't said a word yesterday. So, but then I started seeing YouTube videos from his close friends, and I said, "Uh oh, this looks like it might be real, right?"
Right.
And even still, I was in denial. I was like, "Nah, we'll wait. Let me wait. I'm gonna still wait for the family, right?" Um,
Mm-hmm.
but as these things go, it's really only a matter of time. And so that was yesterday. And of course, people were acting a fool and being really disrespectful and out of pocket. And then, of course, this morning we hear that, yes, he has passed away. And his mother confirmed. And what was so heartbreaking about hearing from her was that she heard about it on social media.
Right.
So she has
Wow.
seen all these people say all these things about her son, which I'm sure some of this isn't really, really new to her. However, when someone passes away, it's more jagged and more pointed. So
Right.
my thoughts are immediately with her because who wants to lose a child, right? And it's
Right.
so sudden. I'm sure she didn't know what was happening in her world yesterday. So, um, out of respect for her, I think it's always important to pause and to really save your comments. And some folks were acting a hot mess yesterday, just out of control. And today, you realize that he has people around him who love him, who care about him, and it's really real for them. And if anybody has lost somebody close to them, you understand the rawness of that, and you're not very consolable at that time. So once that was confirmed, I said, whoa, right? So of course the next thing you ask is, okay, then what happened? How did it happen? And of course there's still a lot more coming out that hasn't been confirmed, you know what I mean? So, but all in all, saying all that, we know that Kevin Samuels was very controversial to a lot of people, not just women. There's some men who didn't like Kevin Samuels. But aside
Right.
from that, you know what I mean? Like, holistically, I see a man who was really trying to make a dent in what he had seen as a black man, what was happening in his community with black men and black women not really connecting. There's been a breakdown in our families, and if you really really listen to him, he explains a lot of things. So if you're really hearing his words, even when he's not talking to the women, he has really poignant commentary that we should be paying attention to, right? So
Right.
that was always the thing for me. And it really, when you think about Kevin Samuels, is he any worse than that honest uncle or that honest grandfather that we used to have, or that honest cousin or whatever? Like, he's pretty raw sometimes, but I mean, when you really think
Right.
about it, what is he saying that we have not heard before? Really?
Right.
And we said it ourselves. Like, let's be real.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like if you had someone come at you disrespectfully, or raise their voice at you, or not let you finish speaking or interrupting you, you would check them, right?
Right.
You would. I don't care if that's a man or a woman, you would check them. And so when you really analyze his videos and you see the discussions and exchanges he was having with women, he usually gave the energy that he received, right? Because there
Mhm.
were those women who would listen, ask questions, um, and it was a discussion he was having. But the women who came on there who were loud, who were ratchet, disrespectful, ignorant, they got that energy back. So on one level, people could say, well, he was disrespectful, he was misogynist, he, shouldn't have told that woman that. But I think sometimes people don't hear you when you tell it to them nicely, and they keep defending their position, right? And
Right.
it's a position that's not really helping them. So that's when you got to take the gloves off. And that's where I think a lot of his guests, in particular the women who would come on there, got really upset.
Right.
You know
And
what I
plus,
mean?
they volunteered to pretty much be on camera. I mean,
Right.
you would ask them a question trying to prove him wrong. So it's like you can't really bash them because they're there to prove him wrong, though.
Right. 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 Well, that's the thing. One of the things, when you have a real debate or a real discussion with people, you back it up with facts.
Right.
And that's what he was always presenting to them. Because you can have an opinion about anything, but you're
Exactly.
not going to really move through life effectively if your whole life is based on emotion and opinion. You have to make decisions based on what's real and
Right.
accurate. This world would not be built on opinion. This world is built
Right.
on logic, to be really honest.
And the thing is, he was using facts and statistics based on black people.
Yes.
That was longer than he is.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
even from down to the CDC, I mean, unless y'all think the CDC isn't credible or not, but when you
Right.
talk about science saying this, that about black people,
Mhm. That's right. That's right.
so you really can't get mad at him. But this is what they're collecting data.
Mhm. It's so true, and we have to. I mean, his passing is incredibly unfortunate, but here's the positive, right? Is
Right,
that, to me, I think it's not good. I will say this, and I saw the a lot of black women happy that he's gone and celebrating. But let me say this: you can celebrate all you want, but is your situation going to change? Is what
right,
he said going to change? You're still,
right,
I'll keep it real with you. There's going to be a whole lot of other Kevin Samuels walking these streets.
right,
Like, it's not about him. He was just a person. He was a messenger, to be honest.
right. I
And
mean,
manosphere aside, like people say, oh, there's so many men in the. No, let's just strike that. What about the average man walking down the street that you're engaging with, right?
right,
And how does he feel and how does he perceive you? Now, you might
right,
not care as a black woman, like, I don't care about his opinion, I don't know him, da 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 da. And that's cool. But really, what Kevin Samuels and other, people like him were saying was, this is why we're not connecting.
right,
Not just dissatisfied with you, because that's a whole personal thing,
Right.
But this is why we're not connecting as, and I want to be with you, Black woman, but I really need you to hear what I'm saying so that we can bridge this gap and work on ourselves together, right?
Right.
So ultimately, and I had this discussion, well, it wasn't really a discussion, it was, going back and forth on YouTube. And
Right.
she asked this one brother, she said, she's like, tell me why we need a man. We don't need a man. And I said to her, I said, let me say something to you. I'm getting a little personal here. My father lost my mother 13 years ago, and they had been together for 35 years, right?
Right.
So ask my father today why he needs my mother. And I guarantee you, he's going to have a whole laundry list of reasons why he needs her, right? And he could have articulated that when she was alive as well, right? But now
Right.
that she's no longer here, his life has definitely changed. His helpmate is gone, right?
Right.
And so I told the young lady, I said, let's hope that you don't get to that level in your life where you have to really, truly reflect on that question again, because you're young, right? And you've never been married or whatever. But when you're in your 60s and your 70s and you're by yourself,
Right.
then at that point, will you still need a man? Right? And some people are adamant. Some women and men too are adamant. I don't need this. I don't need that. What I think they're really saying is they want peace and they want joy and happiness. And we all want that, right? We all want that. But it's not automatic. You have to work towards it, right? And
Right.
so that goes back to your choices, right?
Right.
Just choices. And Byron, that you say things to people and it's factual, they get upset.
Oh, I know all too well.
Like,
Okay.
didn't I just give you facts and give them links and stuff and go look it up and they still
Yeah.
want to argue with you?
Like I'm
Yeah.
like, this is what that this is what's happening. And then most of them
Hmm.
have to be asking questions. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
coming from a young man, I'm 31,
Hmm.
don't have no kids, never been married. I'm just asking questions like
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
this and that. I want to know this and that. Well, I can't believe you said that. Well, that's what's happening. That's what I'm seeing.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
only react. I'm only posting this question because this is what I saw on social media. This is what I'm seeing outside. You know,
Yes.
I just need feedback, like, because this is livid.
Yes, it is. And I hope that, my grandmother used to say, she said, you might not learn today, but you're going to learn. And it's so true, because a lot of times people reject the truth, they reject what's in front of them, and they think, oh, I'm good.
Right,
Because, it saddens me because, I won't reveal my age, but I'm on the other side of 40, right? And so I've seen a lot in my life, and I understand why Black women feel the way they do about Kevin Samuels, right? Because in some ways, when he talks, he stirs up emotions. Now, when I would listen to him, I know he's not talking to me, right? But if you as a Black woman are hearing that and he's stirring up some kind of emotion in you, is he talking about you, right? Think about that. Like, what is he saying that triggered you? Why is that a problem for you? And that is
right,
something I think Black women need to really understand. Is
right,
is this your burden, or is this somebody else's? Now, that might have been me in my 20s getting triggered, but it's not like that anymore for me, you know? And, you know, I've been married before, and I'm in a new relationship. I've been in it for 4 years. We're happy, just moving
okay,
along. Doesn't mean there's not no any challenges, right? But because we're
right,
older, we are learning a lot together because we're willing to listen. That's huge.
right.
You
And
have to
listen,
listen.
right. And listening to Kevin Samuels was like the biggest part of his show. Like, listen, don't you
Yeah.
just be so triggered because
Mm-hmm.
you sound crazy because you don't listen.
Yes, absolutely. And he also was about trying to give women a plan, right?
Right. Definitely.
And saying, okay, you made this decision, but here's the
Right.
reality of your decision. And again, he echoing what a lot of men are saying. And like, here's the thing, too.
Been saying.
You might not, a lot of women, or a lot of men might not even agree with him, but what are the results?
Right.
After you get off the phone and you mad at him, cursing him out, what's happening to your life? Are you leveling up, as they always say? Is
Right.
anything different in your life? And you've
It's
been single for maybe 5 years, 10 years, whatever. What's happening? There's a big difference between preparing yourself, you know what I mean, for that
right.
person versus you going in one relationship after the other, after the other, after the other.
Also,
There's something going on. You're the common denominator, right?
also like it's me. It's like the Matrix. If you seen the movie Matrix,
Yes.
yeah, it's like you seen the Matrix Reloaded when Neo is talking to the Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying there was in the I guess the park. Uh she said Neo, it's like you already made the decision. Now you're trying to figure out why you made it.
Yes.
And I think that's
Yes.
how a lot of women or even men are at this point because
Mm-hmm.
they made a choice. Now
Mm-hmm.
they are a part where like they trying to decide why I made that choice. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like why I did that.
Absolutely. And it's okay to reflect. I mean, we've all
Right.
made relationship choices. We're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay. You're learning. But here's the caveat. If you keep doing the same things over and over, who
Right.
who's to blame, right?
Can't fault
Because
nobody.
ultimately in the end it's still you.
Right.
You are in this situation, whether he's the baby daddy, whether he's the ex-husband, whether he's a one night stand, whatever, you are still in this situation. So, how will you choose better? How will you be better? Right?
Right.
And I know that sometimes, listening to Kevin Samuels, he probably didn't have enough time to go deep. Sometimes he went really deep with people if they were really
Yeah.
really listening. Like
Right.
his shows were like what, sometimes 2 hours and stuff.
Yeah. It be
So
like,
he
Lord,
would go
like,
deep
bro.
on a lot of it, right? So if you're really analyzing it, um, but I say, okay, you disagree with him, so why are you there? Why are you calling in? What do you just want to
Exactly.
complain? Because that's not going to do you any good.
No. And
So
then
oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Um oh, because ultimately in the end you have to still have an action plan, right?
Right.
Yep.
And then when he asked him them real profound questions,
Mm.
it's like he was saying, he would ask them saying things like, okay, you want uh, a high value man, right?
Mhm.
So, and then he would ask them, how many kids you want? They be like, well, I want 3 to 5 kids. So, how much money is this man gonna have
Yeah.
for you and 3 to 5 kids? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you see on their faces, like they really haven't really thought about that,
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
dang, like, and then they be like, like 1,000,000, 500,000. He's like, that's like the 10% of dudes. There's like,
Insane.
right,
Insane. And one of the things I learned a lot by watching him too, is that when you think about creating this thing called legacy, right? Because when you're having children, it isn't just, oh, I'm having children. You're talking about building a future for them as well as for
right,
yourself, right? That it requires planning, it requires discussion, it requires you to get out of your own head and out of your own way. And
Right.
if you don't have someone leading, right, or
Right.
someone's always trying to drive when they're in the
Right.
passenger seat, you're going to cause a wreck.
Right.
And when he talks about submission, and I mean, I know why women have an issue with that word submission. I like the word cooperation, right?
Right.
Because submission can be very disconcerting for people who've been damaged, who have probably had to submit against their will, if you understand what I mean. Like some women who have gone through trauma, who have gone through neglect and abuse. Submission is like, that's their way. They don't want to give up any more than what they've already given up in their lives. So, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a writer and a journalist,
Right.
but just looking at it from a layman's perspective, I understand why women don't like that term. But let's just flip it, okay?
Right.
If you're not going to use the word submission, then what word are you going to use? What are
Right.
you going to do in your relationship to ensure that you both are on the same page and can get there, right?
Cooperative. That's a
Yes,
good word.
absolutely. It's kind of like you have to trust your partner. It's like
Right.
if I'm with my husband, right? And he sees something that I don't see and he says stop. I'm going to stop because I trust him, right? Because
Right.
I don't see what he sees. And
Right.
he's trying to protect both of us. But if
Right.
I'm sitting there arguing with him about what you talking about, why am I stopping? Da 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 da. Then
Right.
a whole moment could be messed up because I'm running my
Right.
mouth asking all these
Right.
questions, right? And it's not that I don't have an opinion and he trusts my opinion, but I also trust that he has his intuition and that he can see.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with that. I want him to save both of our lives. Okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna get in his way. If he helping me, why would I get in his way? I'm not gonna get in his way. you know,
Right.
I don't have to be right. I
Right.
don't,
All
you
the
know,
time.
I don't care. Like if
Right.
it's gonna help us get to the other side of that mountain, the other side of that hill, cool, let's go. Right
Right.
now, where we both, as people in relationships, you have to get to know that person when you get to that place of trusting their intuition that they are there for you because they really do want you to succeed. Right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, with a lot of us, and I've been there too, where someone's betrayed you or they've hurt you or they let you down. Hey, you know, but so what I do in those situations when that happened to me, I just said, okay, what did I do? What can I fix? Because I can't control that other person, but I
Right.
can
You really
control
can't.
me. You know what I mean? So we have a lot to learn and a lot of succeeding in life, and not just in relationships, but in life is
Right.
just we got to control us individually, right? So hopefully as time passes, more and more men and women. I always put men, all of us in there because we're all in this together. Is that we come to our own understanding and realization, but we need other people to help us to get there, right? We don't know everything.
Right.
Like we just don't. Like you said, I'm
Right.
asking questions, and you're seeking those answers outside of
Right.
yourself. But don't
Right.
come to me asking, friends come to you for advice and then you give them advice and they get mad. Like, well, what did you want me to do?
Right.
So yeah, I can say a mouthful, but yeah, I like what was your what was your take on when you saw people speaking really negatively when he passed? Like what were you thinking?
I mean, I'm like, whoa, y'all really hate black men, or because
Oh
I
yeah.
saw a lot of that, but it was like black women, you know what I'm saying? But then
Mm,
it was also I had to look deeper and say most of these black women like are Nigerian,
mm,
African. There was a lot of black immigrants. That was,
wow.
yeah, a lot of black immigrants, yo. I'm talking
Whoa,
about
that's deep.
black London people from the UK. I'm like,
Mm, wow.
Now, when it comes to Black Americans, like we kind of understood what he represented. They understood,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
he said things, but it really helped people, and
Mm-hmm.
then it really helped people to, really reflect on themselves. And he
Yeah.
produced a blueprint to like, okay, start here and then go from there. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And
Mm-hmm.
we kind of like realized that like we had to, like, even for me, like I can tell he comes from the church because I come from the church, and I understand because his role in the manosphere was about image. He
Yeah.
understood like the black male American image is tarnished.
Very, very much so.
I mean,
Absolutely.
very tarnished. And he
Mm-hmm.
like he they talking about he was getting on women. Like, have you seen any videos him getting on black dudes? I
It's
mean,
rough. I've seen a
it's super
couple.
rough, bro. Like,
Yes.
what are you talking
Yes.
about? Like,
Yes.
I mean, I understood what you saying. I was like, man, I didn't get my shit. I mean, because like I understand, like I go to church and I come from Pentecostal. Like my
Mm-hmm.
grandparents was all about like coming to church with the tie on, suit on. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't
Mm-hmm.
be looking raggedy any
Oh
kind of way
no.
in church, bro. Like,
Oh no. That is in raising a lot of this is in how people are raised. I'm just going to keep it 100 because a lot of the behavior that I've seen in our community really comes from a lack of raising or a
right,
lack of people teaching us or teaching these individuals discernment and always holding people accountable.
right,
There was just certain things I was not going to say to my
right,
mother. It
right.
just without her putting,
Putting
some
pause
some
on
some some
it.
power on me. I'm
Putting
gonna keep it
pause
100.
on it.
So my mother, and then of course, my mother was raised in the South. She's from New Orleans, and
Right,
that's where my people are from, North Carolina and New Orleans. And so there's a certain sensibility on how you were going to behave. And these were women in my family and men who had grown up during Jim Crow. So segregation was all that they had known for many years until they got older. So there was a collective um, dynamic that you were going to behave a certain way. You weren't going to walk out looking a certain way. You were going to always hold yourself high and in regard because the rest of the world wasn't seeing you that way. So you were taught to be better because you were being treated so badly by other people. So
right,
a lot of what we see now in this modern era is, people don't know what it's like. I lived in the South. I lived in New Orleans for 6 years, um, and saw a great. People talk about racism, but they don't know. Sometimes you need to go down south where they call you
right,
the N word openly. Like
right,
it's just common, right? So a lot of and it's generational too. I think is that there's no struggle anymore. And so the struggle is, oh, like, how do I get this money? How do I get this money? How do I get this money? And it's like, okay, well, that's not the only issues that we're dealing with. We have so many things we got to deal with. We got to talk about the Black community as a whole, and why are so many of our women overweight, or I should say the country, because this is a
right,
this is an American problem.
right.
You know what I
Very
mean? It's an American problem because when you look back in the 40s and the 50s, there wasn't no overweight people, and you know why?
right,
Right? They were overweight because people didn't have a lot of money.
right,
They ate what they needed to eat, and that was it. We're on a
right,
budget. Granted, the dollar went further, but people didn't have all the luxuries, and so
right,
food was a luxury too.
right.
Now, food is everywhere, so people are are kind of gluttons. They're living like royalty, but not royalty, if you know what I mean. Like we have
Yeah,
so much access to things that we can overindulge in everything,
right,
so that overindulgence then reflects in our relationships. It reflects in how we treat each other. So if a woman feels like she doesn't quote unquote need a man, she could be overindulgent and say, well, forget you. I go on to the next. But
Right.
back in my grandmother's day, there was no next per se because, you know, we already knew that finding, they knew that finding a husband was still a challenge, right? Even though men were more marriage minded back then, you still had to think about the safety of your husband all the time. So you weren't cavalier about his existence because you knew that the minute he walked out the door, he may not come back. It's still like that in a way, but back then it was like, whew, no doubt, no
Right.
doubt. You don't have the clan lurking in the
Right.
same way that they're, I mean, you could say they got the clan in other ways.
Yeah.
You know, police, but I was just saying. Um, but you have a different sense, you had a different sense of um, fear back then that's not felt the same way now. So of course women could be more cavalier about it because they feel like some women treat men as if they're disposable and men do that too. But they're not understanding that you're going to age and you're
Right.
going to need somebody that's really, really there for you. So figure out how you make that happen. And I think that's what Kevin Samuels was really doing, was helping people to understand that you're not just doing this for yourself, but it's going to help you,
Right.
you know, and your children for that matter.
Yeah. Also, like in the Twitter space, like for me, it was looking like you had Democrats, Independents, and Republicans all about Kevin Sanders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like independents and, well, if people don't claim themselves Republicans, or we just call them conservative people,
Mm-hmm.
and they had, real, just real epic, awesome conversation and holding it down,
Yeah.
and really, what I'm saying, getting to really juicy stuff, because anything they had to say about him in a negative way, they would like shut it down and really give them facts and statistics.
Mm-hmm.
But when
Mm-hmm.
it came to Democrats, it was like you can tell they were Democrats because how they was talking.
Mm-hmm.
They probably was like a good 20 people. On the other side, the independents and conservatives, it would be like 2,000 people.
Mm.
And it was like the most people always come up, it was like black immigrants. Like
Mm.
they would like come up and be saying like, "Oh, he hated black people." Like you gonna say that among black people, talking about he hates black people?
You
Like,
know,
like
it's interesting that you talk about the immigrants that come to this country because, again, whew, that's a lot to unpack there too. Because, you know, let's be real, the Black Americans that here on this soil during, you know, the civil rights movement and prior really did pave the way for so many people. We took a lot of butt whippings, if I'm going to
right,
be honest, and really fought hard for so much, just basic human rights. We're not even going to talk about where we can sit and eat in a restaurant or the bus. It was even deeper than that, right? We're
right,
talking about economic rights. We're talking about union rights. We're talking about, you know, just everything. And so, because so many people who come to this country don't really know the history, they take so much for granted and they look
yeah,
down on us. And there's some cases, rightly so, where we have lost touch of who we are historically and all the sacrifices that were made for us. And the people who were making the sacrifices weren't necessarily making the sacrifice for us. It was just, it was a certain level of pride that you had to have as a human being,
right,
you know. When I look at my parents, you know, yeah, they were making choices and, you know, for the future, but they were also having to live in the moment. Like, this is real stuff. Like, you know, you're being harassed by the police every single day. Like, my mother, used to, she grew up in New Orleans, but then she moved to Oakland and the Bay Area during the height of the Black Panther movement, right? And the police brutality was real. You hear me? Like, you think we harassed by the police now? You didn't see nothing back in the day. And so you were organizing and fighting against the system because it was fighting against you. So it wasn't just about having an ideal about what is a civil right or what is a human right. It's basically, how do I just survive this? But if I don't plan and I don't organize and I don't get it together collectively with my people, then we're going to all perish. And so when you talk about people coming over who are new to this country, they know the history, quote unquote, but because they weren't involved, they
Yeah.
don't have a true appreciation for all the stuff that we went through. Like, you can't imagine it. Yeah, you could read about it in a book, but unless you really live through that time, you don't know. It's just a book. It's just a story to you, right? So that's why I feel a certain way about people who don't really understand the history and they just write things off. It's like, did you know this and did you know that? So when you start having those deep conversations about people, you have to always remind people, well, you know, where were you like when all this was going on? And that's not taking anything away from what they left, because a lot of people who come to this country, they went through hell too, and
Mhm.
even worse in some cases, the genocide and the mutilations and all of that. Like, we get that, right? But I'll never discount someone's struggle and say mine was worse than yours, because your struggle is your struggle and that was your experience. Who am I to diminish it or whatever? So, but again, our responsibility for those who are, you know, native to this land, and when I say native, I mean us too. Some of us forget that we are aboriginal to this country. All of us, we have history of slavery and slaves in our family tree, but some of us also have indigenous roots as well. That's real talk. So we have to know our own history. We have to know who we are, right? Because that informs all of our decisions, right? If you don't know who you are, yes, you'll focus on money all the time. Yes, you'll focus on, image all the time. Yes, you'll focus on those superficial things. And I'm not saying that image isn't important, but you have to understand the why behind it. Because when Kevin Samuels talked about image, he would get historical with people,
Right.
right? And that's real stuff. But if our if our youth are not getting educated in a way that's really showing the holistic side of who we are, then how do they know? They just walking around here, I don't care about the past. And I've heard that from the youth, right? And I've been working with youth, you know, gosh, for so many years. And I worked at Job Corps, Los Angeles Job Corps for 4 years. And I saw so much about our youth. And it's because they just don't know, you know. And my role was to help educate and give them history. And boy, when you open their minds to it, like, oh, I didn't know that, because our public schools aren't teaching them that, right? So part of understanding who you are means really having a holistic view of yourself historically, so that you don't get caught in the trick bag. Because again, if you don't know who you are, you don't know the history, you'll think that making money is everything.
Right.
That's only part of it.
Right.
And then, and you and I have been talking about this on social media too, that if you really are paying attention, that dollar that you love so much, it's losing its value. So if you really
Yeah.
understand money, you'll stop talking so much about money. You'll start educating yourself about money, because that dollar might is not going to be the same in the next 5 years. You up here,
Right.
people up here thinking they rich. You're not rich. That same $1 million you have today gonna be worth half of that. So
Facts.
all
Facts.
this value, talking about money, and I want a man that make X Y Z Z Z Z Z. Women and men need to work together, because your dollar is not going as far as it used to. So
Right.
you up
Very.
here talking, acting like you balling. You're not balling. If If you have to work, you're not balling. I'm keeping it 100
Right.
because people who have money are investors.
Right.
They not going to no JOB like that. Or they're running the company. How about that? Keeping it
Right.
real. So I listen to people talk all this about money and he got to make this, he got to make that.
Yeah.
No, no, no. You need to be talking about entrepreneurship if you're really talking about somebody making money. And that still is a lot of work. And if you're talking about being with an entrepreneur, you working in the company too.
Yep.
That's real talk. When I see a lot of couples who are really thriving and they're owning their own businesses, they are working together.
Right.
You hear me? I don't, and they may not necessarily be working with each other in their respective companies, but they're working together because they both understand what that means to hustle
Right.
and get that money. So a lot of these women be talking all that. They don't know what they're talking about. It's just surface. You're not spending money when you're making money. And I say that as an artist, as a writer, as a person who is an investor. Like you're not spending all your money. You're not. You're going to invest it in something that's valuable and that's going to grow because if you don't plan, you're going to be sitting there looking homeless by the time you're
Yeah.
in your 70s.
Yeah. And he was warning everybody. He was like, "Oh,
Everybody.
if y'all don't
So
buckle up, y'all like, because he was right. Like, men already know what it is. Like, we already know we going to
yeah,
spend
because
on
men
that.
move differently. Men are
Yeah.
very practical. You guys are very practical, and you know what's expected of you. Society tells you that you must have X, Y, Z, Z, Z.
Right.
Right. And I told this one young lady, again, it was a young lady, she was like, she was saying, well, we're tired of all these men who can't afford this and can't afford that, and they're broke this, broke that. And I said, I understand that. I said, but who are you guys dealing with? Because the men that I see understand what society expects of them and are rising to challenges because they know they can't be broke in this quote unquote traditional sense of I'm broke, right?
Right.
They know they have to get up and find a profession, right?
Right.
That they're proud of, that they have to earn. They know that that's their responsibility, and that pretty much hasn't changed at all. They also know that if they're going to get married and have a family, they need money, and even if they're going to just date, they need money, right? So I asked her, I said, "Well, who are y'all talking about?" Because I don't really know men who are just sitting around there not doing anything. Like, who are those men? Just sitting on the couch.
Right.
Those are the worst of the worst. So why are you guys dealing with the worst of the worst? Why are you not around men who are productive? Because I see men productive a lot around. Like I said, I see them. I don't know where these women are going. I don't know what's going on.
And then you can't blame like I see them blaming a lot of other like the educated lames for not getting picked by
Mm,
them. And it's like,
mm-hmm.
well, these educated lames were around you when you was in college, yo. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
how is it his fault for not picking you? I mean, because you chose other dudes like Ray and Pookie, you know what I'm saying? Who got
Mm-hmm.
you pregnant, and then I guess the educated lane got paid, play cleanup, which he doesn't have to do. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's his choice. If he wants to be with you, that's because he chose to. He doesn't
Yes.
have to do that.
That is so. Nobody owes us anything. And
Right.
when I went to college, I had a girlfriend. We were good friends, and she made it really clear because her mother, again, it goes back to how you were raised. She made it very clear that she was going to college to find her husband. She she wasn't playing around. Now that didn't necessarily work out for her, um, but she got married later. But she wasn't coming to college just to get a degree, right? And her mother was a wealthy woman. Her mother had she was independent, was doing her thing, and I guess you could say she was spoiled in a way. My friend was spoiled in a way, but I think what her mother had taught her was don't just waste those 4 years partying and having fun. Have a plan. Yes, get your degree, but then what else are you going to do, right?
Right.
So a lot of what I heard Kevin Samuels talking about was have a plan and be strategic in everything that you do, because life isn't just about emotions. You can't spend your whole life making decisions based on how you feel today.
Right.
You gonna be changing your mind all the time. So the world expects and demands practical approach to how you do things. So yes, for these young ladies who go to college, yes, go to college, get your degree, have a plan, but also know that in that space and time, you know, who's going to share this legacy with you, right? Who's going to share it with you? And it's all good and it's all fun and games until you left empty handed, meaning that you spent 30, 40 years or whatever of your life building a business and you have no one. And when I look at the really successful women, like, and not necessarily name dropping celebrities, but look at the female celebrities. A lot of them are what? They're married. You
Yeah.
know, they are married. So even they at that level in their careers understand they can't do it by themselves.
And then they was the main ones telling you to stay single.
See,
But
see,
they end up getting
see.
married.
No, don't listen to what people say. Look at what they do. Look at what
Right.
they do.
Nicki
And
Minaj, married.
all of that.
Beyonce, married.
Married. All of
Sierra,
them
married.
married.
But
And
told you to
even
stay single.
absolutely. And even the ones who are divorced now, they still got married though.
Yeah,
Mary J. Blige got married. She's like, I'm gonna get
yeah.
married. Like, so I don't know what I I hope, and I understand where Kevin Samuels was coming from when he said die alone. I don't think he meant that um to be insulting. When
Right,
I listened to him say that, he really said it as, okay, I'm done talking to you. Fine, do
right,
what you want. Do what you want.
right. Do what you
Do what
want.
you want. Because I can't tell you. I'm giving you statistics. I'm listening to all your monologue, your long monologue, and
And
asking all these questions about the choices you made. So really, it's sad. It's you gotta. Everybody can't teach you everything. Sometimes you do have to learn, and life is going to be your best teacher, unfortunately. So,
yeah,
but I do have hope that some people will get it turned around. And I'm going to be honest about it. It's going to be life that is going to change a lot of women's minds about things.
right,
Because when you see a recession coming, when you see
right,
life start changing on you, and you see that life is hard for you, not just financially, you're going to have to start saying to yourself, okay, how do I navigate this? It doesn't mean you can't count on your friends and your family, but guess what? You There's nothing like having a partner, right? Yes, I have great friends. Don't get me wrong, but everybody's got a life. They have their own families, right?
right,
you know. Um, so at some point, we will. Some of us, all of us, not gonna make it. I'm gonna keep it 100. Some people just they will die alone, right?
right,
And it will be very unfortunate and very sad. But what will happen is sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. So all of these women who are going through these changes, their sons and their daughters are going to say, I'm not going to be like mama and daddy. I'm going to do things differently.
right,
So for all the negativity that you see happening, you do see the next generation saying, I'm not going to do what my mom and my dad did and go through these changes, right?
right,
And we said it ourselves. Like, our parents loved us and they cared for us, but we knew they had their own battles. And we said, well, I'm going to do it differently than what mama did it or daddy did it, you know. And that's the way it should be. The next generation should be not repeating those mistakes, that we made.
right. But thank you for being a guest. We need to do these more.
Oh my God, yes. I love
Yeah.
it.
Hopefully we have more guests. Hopefully these so-called naysayers and critics. They say a whole lot on social medias, but when it's time to speak, they kind of quiet. Like they quiet. Like they kind of shy. They
Yeah, well, Byron.
why you scared, bro?
Well, because Byron, let's keep it real. They know that you read, you pay attention to the world, you educate yourself. And before you step out there and start talking to people and debating people, you have to come correct with your
Right,
facts and
right,
not just emotions. I have that too. People don't really want to debate me. And it's not because I'm the smartest person in the room, it's because I just read and I pay
right,
attention and I ask questions like you do, right? And I'm not going to just open my mouth and just say stuff I know nothing about,
right.
right? I'm going to come from more of an informed place and ask more questions. And I would love to have more people on this, panel and talking so that we can have a real robust conversation about the future. Because, you know, we can feel any way we want to feel about something, but unless we do something, then what? Like, I don't want to just talk about feelings all day long. That's not gonna get us anywhere. Like this discussion here was really, really amazing, and I think if we listen to each other more, we'll learn something.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, we'll see what people talk about, or maybe it's too raw for them right now. I don't know. Maybe they need to get some distance from it so they can talk about it more. But we're gonna hear more about this.
yeah.
We're gonna hear more about it.
Well, until next time, guys, be amazing. We out. Peace.
Peace.